I was reading books and I heard about your podcast actually from my mom. My mom is a doula who was there at
That's
our home birth,
awesome.
which was amazing. It was so
I
cool. Her
love
name's
it.
Doula Deborah. And she was actually the one that was so supportive of a home birth. Like I remember me expressing to her, like, I don't feel like I'm allowed to have a home birth for my first kid. Like, shouldn't I have my first kid in a hospital so I know what to expect? And I just remember her saying, you don't have to have an experience that you don't want in order to have an experience that you do want. Like, you don't have to go through some kind of possibly traumatic or, just a hospital birth that you're not going to enjoy or what you don't want in order to have like the home birth of your dreams. You don't have to experience it in order to experience it.
Our reviewer of the week is Kate, mom of 4, and she says, empowering and inspiring. I had felt so defeated after having a traumatic vaginal birth full of interventions and a painful C-section with my second. With my third, I wasn't even sure I wanted to try for a VBAC as I had no confidence in my own ability to birth my baby. Then, as if by divine intervention, I found this podcast during that third pregnancy. It changed everything for me. I went from feeling like birth happened to me twice to going on to have 2 more babies via beautiful and redemptive VBACs. Last one completely unmedicated. Stephanie does a great job informing mothers on their options and potential hiccups in the pregnancy and birthing process so listeners can make the best decision for themselves and for their babies. This podcast and the birth course are a must for any woman. My husband was also grateful for the easily digestible information from both the podcast and course. I am forever thankful and still listen to the podcast weekly. Love, Katie. Thank you, Katie. What an awesome way to start this episode. And I love it too, because you guys, if you are listening today, I have both mom and dad here for this podcast episode, which I just think is such a benefit to everybody listening. And so moms, if you are listening right now, make sure you bookmark this one because we're going to have some of dad's views on here too. And I think that's so useful for you to be able to share this with your husbands and your birth partners and whoever is ready and willing to help and support mom along the way. So with that, Liv and Matt, will you take a moment and introduce yourselves, please?
Hi, of course, we would love to. Thank you so much for having us today. So my name is Liv. We are based out of Metro Detroit. I am a photographer here in the Metro Detroit area. I typically shoot brand photography and boudoir photography. And this is my husband, Matt.
Hi, I'm Matt. I work in corporate security for General Motors, and this is our first baby, so it was a very big learning curve and big adventure, but happy that, we did it the way we did and had the help and guidance that we did. So excited to get into that.
Awesome. Well, let's start with your pregnancy. Tell me how your pregnancy went, any kind of things that came up along the way, and how did you feel? Were you happy to be pregnant? Does your body like pregnancy? Was it a struggle? What was it like for you?
It was really good. It was our first pregnancy. I think from the beginning, like, it was just a wonderful experience. I don't know that I had very many expectations or even had thought much about what being pregnant would feel like. I definitely am somebody that experiences things as they come to me. And so from the very beginning, it was just a really, really cool experience. I had a good bit of nausea in the first trimester, and that really surprised me because I was assuming incorrectly that third trimester was going to be the hardest, worst part of it. And it kind of kicked me on my butt right at the beginning. So I think it was a good reality check of oh no, I'm pregnant. We need to make some accommodations here. I need to slow down a little bit. But we had a really healthy pregnancy from the very start. It was wonderful. I think probably one of the biggest things that Matt really helped me with at the beginning was just being so supportive of pregnancy from day one, because I was not anticipating first trimester to be that bad. I felt like I was just kind of car sick all day long, every day for the first 15 weeks. And so that was kind of surprising to me. And I was just also surprised at how tired I was from the very beginning. That really surprised me. There were sometimes I'd take 2 or 3 naps in a day, and I just was so confused. It's not my personality at all to take a nap in general. And so that really, really surprised me.
Yeah. And how about for you, Matt? Was there anything surprising or that like unexpected with her getting pregnant that kind of caught you off guard, or you were like, oh, I didn't realize that was going to happen?
I guess it's hard to remember like specific things. I just in general, like if you haven't. So for me personally, I really haven't been around babies that much. I was the youngest in my family, didn't have any younger siblings. Um, and there really haven't been a lot of babies on my side of the family for quite a few years. So just a lot of stuff that I didn't know, both about um, the process from her side, right? Like how her body's changing and all of that stuff. And then, um, even after the birth of like, how do we deal with this? And, what do babies need? And I wouldn't say that it was like overwhelming. I think my personality type is typically to like I try to prepare for things, but also kind of like Liv said, take things as they come and deal with them as they come. But definitely a lot of new things to learn and take in.
Definitely. When did you guys dive into the birth course? How early on or how late was that?
We were pretty late to the game with that. I feel like with a lot of things in my pregnancy, I was just kind of, I feel like I was very overwhelmed at the beginning in that first trimester, and we were just kind of late to the game for everything. Like, we didn't.
I'll say it, in denial.
In denial. Very in denial. I don't think we started the birth course probably until the third trimester. We'll get into like things, but I was very nervous. I knew from the very beginning that I liked the idea of a home birth. But as a first time mom, it really scared me. And I felt like I wasn't allowed to. Like I had to have a second or a third kid before I was allowed to have it at home. And so I really dragged my feet on a lot of things. Like we didn't actually pick my midwife until I was about 20 weeks pregnant. We didn't get the birth course until I was in the third trimester, and it was right around the corner. So we were definitely dragging our feet on some of those things.
No, I think what you're speaking is just truth, that a lot of women, you're not alone in that. And so I think it's really awesome that you're sharing it right now, because other women are going to benefit from hearing it. That's very much the case. Even myself, right? Like I same thing. I wouldn't have thought. I'm like, no to home birth for sure with a first baby. That is where my head would have been. I didn't even know home birth was an option at that time. But then like there's just certain things that you're speaking that it's like, yes, women feel this way. So it actually really matters to say it out loud and to know that you're not alone. So I appreciate you sharing that. With that, and one of the reasons I asked is because I was curious. And since it wasn't until your third trimester, it makes me wonder like what kind of snags or conversations maybe that you ran into maybe with your providers or things that happened during your pregnancy. Like, did you have at your 20 week, did you have an anatomy scan that showed baby was going to be older or younger? Like, and maybe you didn't have any information for those things yet. So did you run into anything like that during this pregnancy?
Not as much. Like for as much as we dragged our feet about picking a provider and committing to a home birth, I feel like I was reading books, and I heard about your podcast actually from my mom. My mom is a doula who was there at
That's
our
awesome.
home birth, which was amazing. It was so cool.
I love
It was
it.
doula Deborah. And she was actually the one that was so supportive of a home birth. Like I remember me expressing to her, like, I don't feel like I'm allowed to have a home birth for my first kid. Like, shouldn't I have my first kid in a hospital so I know what to expect? And I just remember her saying, you don't have to have an experience that you don't want in order to have an experience that you do want. Like you don't have to go through some kind of possibly traumatic or, just a hospital birth that you're not going to enjoy or what you don't want in order to have like the home birth of your dreams. You don't have to experience it in order to experience it. And that was just such a huge revelation to me. And I think really gave me the permission to kind of step out in confidence and commit to having a home birth. And she was also the one that kind of encouraged me around that 20-week mark of like, okay, well, if you're going to do it, it's time to do it. You need to pick a midwife. We need to start getting things going. Maybe start thinking about those things. So it was really
I
good
love
that she
that
did.
from both a mom and a doula perspective. Also, I
Yes.
feel like that's going to be the quote of the week when this birth story goes live, that you don't have to have an experience you don't want to have an experience that you do want. That is gold. So I'll quote Deborah, doula Deborah, on that one.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's so awesome. I love it. And I had no idea. I had no idea your mom was your doula. What a special story.
Yeah, it was crazy.
I do remember we did have, I don't remember which appointment it was, but there was some issues they found with, I want to say, kidneys potentially, where like
A
it was
duplex kidney.
okay. Yeah, I didn't remember the details, but that was one thing that like it ended up being fine with the later, scans and appointments. But probably if we had been a little farther ahead and had picked all of our providers and everything sooner, that would have been a good time where we could have gone to them and gotten their opinion as opposed to, resorting to good old Google.
Good old Dr. Google, yes. So
Yeah.
did you, before picking that midwife at 20 weeks, did you have any prenatal appointments? And did you have them with like your regular OB or who did you have them with?
No, we didn't. I had one ultrasound around the 8 to 9 week mark just to confirm heartbeat and confirm the pregnancy. And after that, I really just dragged my feet. We were feeling, I was feeling good. I was feeling nauseous, but everything felt as it should be. We both were pretty calm about the whole thing, and we toured a birth center. We started looking into hospitals and things, but I am someone that just I don't feel comfortable in a hospital. I get very anxious typically at medical providers, and I feel on a good day like it's a struggle for me to advocate for myself just when it's medical things. And so I knew with some of the stories I had heard of hospitals and just how you need to really advocate for yourself at a birth and labor and delivery, I just knew that it wasn't going to be a great fit for me and that I would not feel relaxed and comfortable during that whole time. So if the alternative was something where we got to be at home and we got to be comfortable and we got to be together and we could choose specifically the people that we knew ahead of time that were going to be there for our labor, and that I could just really experience it and let it happen as naturally and comfortably as it could, I knew that I would be so much more relaxed through my labor and that overall it would be a really good experience for us.
Yeah, I like that. Matt, what did you think about this whole home birth scenario thing? Did that worry you at all? Did it seem like the natural next step?
So I think I came from my family, I would say, is a little bit more open to like alternative approach to medicine, right? Like not rejecting modern medicine by any means, but just like I'm aware of the fact that there are issues, that with the systemic, there's systemic issues with modern medicine in some cases. And even as Olivia listened to podcasts like yours and, was reading books, we learned more of those things that she shared with me of like, hey, these are all the practices that are common in hospitals that are really aimed more at, cranking out, I guess, for lack of a better term, deliveries as opposed to actually providing personalized care for what that person needs. So I would say I probably was already kind of receptive to it, but the more that I learned, mostly through her sharing things,
maybe
with
a little
me.
biased.
Yeah, but I think that kind of solidified it for me. And then also just knowing, like Liv already shared, that she's not always comfortable in, doctors' offices and stuff like that in the first place. It was something that I wanted to make sure we talked through and took a very serious approach to. Like I didn't want to accept it lightly, but after we did that, I think we both knew it was the right approach.
Yeah. When you guys met with the midwife, Matt, were you with her, and what kind of questions did you ask her? How did you know that that was a good fit for you? And did you interview more than one, or was there just one option in the area?
That's a great question. So we first heard of Forest River Midwifery, Colleen, through some mutual friends of ours. There weren't a ton of midwives in our area. There was kind of like 3 or 4 to choose from. But from checking her out on social media and hearing from our friends' personal experience, like she just sounded amazing. She had birthed so many babies. She had a ton of experience. She had been doing it for a long time. So I set up an appointment with her first. And I remember asking Matt because I found the midwife, and then I was like, oh, it's all coming together. Maybe I can have a home birth. Maybe this is a possibility for us. And I remember sitting and showing him her Facebook page and just reading through some of the stories of like, well, these people did it. Why can't I do it? If they did it, like they're here. Why can't we? And so we set up an appointment with her, and Colleen just had such an overwhelming sense of like peace and calm. And I am somebody that is super type A and super rush, and it's always going to the next thing. And so from that first prenatal appointment with her, we're like, it was an hour and we just talked. And I will admit a little bit of me was like, oh my gosh, what is taking so long? Why are we doing this? What are we doing? What are we done? And I realized like, she's perfect. Like she is so perfect. That is the environment I want to have my baby in. I want somebody that like has my full attention and hangs on my every word and is just so interested in how I'm feeling and what my baby's feeling. And it was such a night and day difference from like the one ultrasound appointment where they check you in, check you out, 5 minutes, you good, you feel fine, okay, great, call us next week, to somebody that actually sat down and listened. And so I came home and I told Matt, I was like, she's the one. I love her. I really like her. Do you want to meet her? And he was confident that if I felt comfortable with her, then he was fine. So he actually didn't meet Colleen until our 36-week appointment when she was officially on call and she came to our house for a home visit. So it was really, really just kind of fell together. She was a perfect fit for us.
That's great. Tell me a little bit about how you prepared for your birth. So you dove into the birth course in the 3rd trimester. What kind of things did you start doing right away? And how did you guys work together on preparing for the birth?
I think from the very beginning, when I found out I was pregnant, we were very intentional about preparing for the labor. In first trimester, it freaked me out so bad. Like I still remember telling Matt, I was like, oh my gosh, there's a baby in me and it has to come out. Like, what? And I remember him being like, yeah, that's kind of how this works. And the further and further along to the 3rd trimester, the more and more excited I was to get the baby out of me and to look forward to labor and just to be able to meet her and just not be pregnant anymore. So from day one, he was so accountable with me of eating healthy, of making sure I was moving, walking, exercising. As a photographer, it is a very active job. And I knew that I wanted to work for the majority of my pregnancy. So I was shooting weddings up until like 28, 29 weeks pregnant. I was moving a lot, and that helped a ton for the 1st and 2nd trimester. I think around halfway through the 2nd trimester and every night through the 3rd, I started doing the 3 exercises in your course. I was doing all my stretches. I started practicing my breathing and my breath work. And I ended up writing a ton of mantras on the mirrors in our bedroom. A lot of people that had babies before me were asking me like, oh, well, you should do hypnobirthing. Are you relaxing? Practice your relaxation techniques. And I remember in the 3rd trimester being so frustrated at how intangible that was and just being like, I breathe every day. Am I doing it right? I don't know. Like, how do you know if you've prepared enough relaxation techniques? Am I relaxed? I don't know. And so I found that those mantras really made a huge difference. And despite having a home birth, I'm not a super woo-woo person. So it wasn't so much like memorization or just mantras for the sake of having mantras, but I found it to be a really tangible way to kind of respond to those negative thoughts and the doubts that I had, because I was confident in my decision to have a home birth, but I was still having like those fears and insecurities up until the 3rd trimester of like, well, what if I don't know how to do this? What happens if I don't know what to do? And just having that mantra to be able to respond with, my body knows how to birth my baby, was huge. What if I start labor and the labor is too painful and I don't have an epidural? Like, what happens if that happens? And just being able to respond with that with, the pain is not going to be too much for me because my body is the thing producing the pain and like the things to combat the pain. And, what if something terrible happens? And just having the mantra of, God has already written this birth story and fear has no place in this birth. Like that was so huge to me. And I'm getting goosebumps because
Me
there
too.
were times that, oh, good. There were times that I told myself that, and I was so fearful of the unknown and so fearful of not knowing what to expect and what would happen. And there were times that I told myself that fear has no place in this birth. And it was with like tears coming down my eyes as I'm doing my stretches and exercising, knowing that I felt so fearful. And as we got closer and closer to labor and delivery, I just had such an overwhelming sense of peace and calm and excitement to be able to do it and to be able to do it the way that I wanted. that it was really incredible. And I know that the mantras had a huge part in that. I know that having Matt by my side and knowing that he would be relaxed and calm in a home birth, knowing that my mom and doula would be there, and knowing that we got to pick Colleen as my midwife, and that was it. That was our core team of people that would get to welcome my baby into this world. It was such a peaceful and beautiful experience. And those mantras and those exercises were two huge components of that.
That's great. Matt, I want to hear from you. How do you feel like you were able to support her, and what things did you find yourself doing in order to be able to do that? And then what kind of preparation did you end up doing for yourself? Because I don't know that we talk about that enough, because there's a lot of prep work that goes into being a dad.
I mean, I'll be completely honest. I probably didn't have enough of the preparation on the front side of it. I feel like I think I was able to offer a lot of support after the birth, and I don't know, maybe we'll get into that, but like ahead of time, I definitely was one of those husbands that probably pretty commonly is like, well, you can, you're the one that has to give birth, so I'll let you learn all of the breathing techniques and stuff, and like I'll be there and I'll support you for sure, but I didn't dive into the details probably as much as I could have. I would say that I think it worked for us, but wouldn't necessarily like advocate. I think other husbands, you probably should get a little bit more involved in the preparation and all that.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
Because I wasn't sure if you're going to bring that up or not. I remember like first trimester, I was so excited. We were pregnant. I had this whole stack of books. I had this whole videos, all this stuff. And I was like, okay, I finished this one. Do you want to read it? And he looked at me. He was like, I am not going to read any of those books. He's like, if there is something specifically you want me to read, then of course I'll read it. But I'm not. You enjoy that. And at first I was really like kind of hurt and like, what the heck, man, you're about to be a dad too. And then I was kind of frustrated, like, oh, okay, like, I guess you're supposed to be supportive in this. But the more that we like did it, the more I educated myself. And now with hindsight, I'm kind of glad that you were like that, because it really helped me take responsibility for my own preparations for labor. And it gave us really cool opportunities to have amazing conversations about what I was feeling, what was happening with my body, how to prep for labor. And I feel like if we both were just reading books at the same time, we wouldn't have had that like bonding experience to be able to talk through it. And it was really fun. Every night when we would make dinner, I'd be like, did you know my blood volume is doubling right now? And we'd talk about that. Did you know for labor, the contractions are going to like this, and this? And it was really cool to be able to have those like real life conversations instead of him reading books, me reading books, and kind of comparing notes.
Just like to piggyback off of that, I think I was kind of already going to go there anyway, of one of the things that I think I did do a good job of ahead of time, and that I would recommend is having really good communication about like some of the specific things that come to mind is how understanding how your spouse receives support and love, and like the love languages, and even just I guess having a good foundation of those types of things ahead of time. And that's going to look different for different people, but like we talked ahead of time about how I told her like I'm not usually a super verbal affirmation person. Like I'm more of a quiet support, and like having a hand on her knee and offering that kind of physical presence. And so we talked through some of that stuff of like me saying, hey, this is how I think I'm naturally going to be supporting you during the delivery. And is that okay with you? And do you need anything that would stretch what I'm typically comfortable with? And even just like, I don't know if other people talk about this, but just thinking about you're going to have other people in the room that you're not usually around and comfortable with, like the midwife, and having to show affection and everything in with those other people around. So like I think thinking through those topics and communicating about what her expectations were and what my expectations were was helpful.
I think that's huge for any birth too, because ours was a little bit unique in being a home birth, and that it was so private that it felt a lot of like, well, they're going to be there. And it's, like it's my mom, it's his mother-in-law. Like, I know that's not the case for everybody, but we felt kind of like, oh, they're like watching us. So you go rub my back, that kind of thing. But if you're in a hospital too, it's the same thing of just communicating expectations around, well, if there's random strangers, if there's nurses, like, what do you need from me? What should I expect from you? And for me to be able to have the space of like, well, I don't know what I'm going to need because I've never been in labor before. I don't know. I might need you to, I might not. But just knowing and kind of having those expectations. Like I remember him being like, I'm not really the type that's going to be like super verbal encouragement. And knowing that my midwife and my doula I was like, that's fine. I'll get that from them. I need you to be near me. Like, I want you to be holding my hand. I don't know if I'm going to want you like rubbing my back and stuff, but like, I just need to know that you're there, because as long as you were there, as long as you're in the room, I remember joking with you and being like, you better hold it, because if I'm not going to the bathroom, you're not leaving the room. If you're hungry, I'm hungry. Like, we are in this together. So don't leave me. That was the big thing for me, to find support and comfort through his presence.
Yeah, I actually think what you said is just perfect for dads to hear. And I think I don't know that I've approached it from that angle before. So it's definitely something that, like, even as I'm making course updates and such right now, like, that needs to go in. Dads posing that question. This is how I'm comfortable. What do you need? Instead of, oftentimes what I have moms do is let them know what you need, which is helpful. But I actually I love hearing it from that perspective as well. So I think that's really helpful. And then you also mentioned, Liv, that he was really good about reminding you to eat well or do your exercises or check in with you on those kinds of things. And that's something that we need, and even if the only reason to have it, not necessarily to remind us, because maybe we're really good at that, but is to know that they're paying attention, that it's that, like, I love you enough to ask you, that I know these things matter to you. So anyways, I just think that's awesome. Yes, there's always more we can do, right? Like, yes, reading all the books and all that, that's great. But what you did is what matters. And anyway, so that's awesome. That's really great. Tell me about coming up to labor. So we talked about kind of the pregnancy side of things and some of the prep work that you did in regards to the course, which would be like the learning and the exercises and all that kind of stuff. When you were getting ready to getting closer to labor time, was there anything that your midwife recommended? Was there anything within the course that you did in the way of like evening primrose oil or red raspberry leaf tea, or you started walking more regularly? How did you prepare in those final weeks?
So in those final weeks, they got really rough mentally. Our due date was December 12th, and everybody told me, my midwife, my doula, my mom, everyone was like, you're a first time mom, you're probably going to go late. And in my head, I was like, yes, I hear that, but I don't want a Christmas baby. It's really close to the holidays. It would be awesome if she came like just a few days early or on time. I mean, late's fine too, but just come early. That'd be great. Our baby girl ended up being 41 in 5 days, just shy of 2 weeks, and she ended up coming right on Christmas Eve, which is so funny to me, and I love that that's the story now. And so in those weeks leading up to it, it definitely was mentally really hard, of just every day that waiting of like, well, is it today? Is it today? Is it going to be tomorrow? Should I make plans? Am I eating a good dinner in case I go into labor tonight? Am I hydrated enough? And so that really ended up wearing me down. And I feel like on the 23rd, I started actually having contractions, and I was so excited that they would start. And we had talked about taking castor oil, and I talked to my midwife about it because I was just really getting over it mentally. And with the holidays so close, and just the waiting game was really, really making me get on edge and stressed, which was a new experience, because in the weeks leading up to that, I felt so calm and so relaxed and so ready. And it was just really starting to like wear me down. So my midwife recommended, or like I asked her, can I take the castor oil? What are my options here? So I did end up taking castor oil on the 24th, after walking a ton, just kind of hanging out for a bit. So that was awesome because it did kickstart my labor. Castor oil is disgusting. I just want to throw that out there. So it tastes like you're drinking melted chopsticks, which was just like the worst consistency. Colleen recommended I mix it with orange juice, so that made it a little bit more tolerable. And then it kind of waited. We walked around the neighborhood. It was the 24th, like I mentioned. I was feeling just fine afterwards. If anything, I was kind of frustrated and annoyed that it didn't instantly like start. And so he ended up going for a hike in a park nearby. I ended up starting to watch Elf and then just got so tired, took a nap and slept for like 2 hours. And then I woke up and with castor oil, I pooped my guts out. He came back home. And maybe 45 minutes after that, contractions actually started ramping up, which was so exciting. I just remember being so happy that they had started. Like I had Braxton Hicks for like weeks leading up to it, just inconsistently. And just every time I was like, oh, is that it? Oh, is this what it's gonna be? So when they finally started, I was so excited. Once the contractions stuck around for maybe 3 hours, 4 hours, they were very gentle, very light. It felt almost like a period cramp or like just like my abdomen like tightening and then relaxing. We called his sister, had her pick up the dogs for us, and we kind of just hunkered down at home and started anticipating her arrival. It was so nice not having to worry about driving to a hospital or transportation. And I feel like throughout the whole evening, we kept being like, oh my gosh, if we were going to a hospital, we'd have to be like packing our bags right now and getting ready to like leave, but we don't have to. And we definitely procrastinated making our birth playlist. So it was really fun that evening to like just kind of find songs that we loved from our dating, from our wedding day, from different vacations we had, and we were just kind of doing things to like build that environment. I remember at one point I would not stop moving. I was like doing the stair steppers. I was walking around the house. I was rolling on my birth ball. And he finally was like, you need to slow down. You got like a long road ahead of you tonight. Maybe just like sit and chill a little bit. Which I'm so glad that he did, because I was about to run up the stairs 100 times. I was like, yeah, okay, you're right. I'll calm down a little bit. Around 10 p.m. was when we realized we didn't blow up our birth pool yet. And so he was like, we really should start like prepping. It is happening now. So we went upstairs and he started preparing that. And it was wonderful. It was so nice just being the two of us and just listening to our music. And I remember I was just kind of like swaying and dancing. I want to say contractions were maybe 5 minutes apart at this point. So he was blowing up the pool and getting water set. And I was just kind of doing last minute things to get things. Honestly, everything was prepped and ready to go. I was just kind of wandering around and just enjoying it, which sounds so crazy. And I never thought that I would ever say that. Like, if you would ask me before I was pregnant or first trimester, like if I was going to be that enthusiastic about my labor, I would have thought that you were insane, because it was just not what I was expecting at all. I think mindset wise for labor, I really viewed it as a marathon, as far as like a physical activity and as far as like not being a sprint. That is something that really helped me, of like viewing it as a physical thing first and kind of an emotional thing second. I feel like it was the task at hand, and I was so excited to be able to like accomplish it. I'm a little bit of a type 3 Enneagram, and so that was very encouraging to me to be able to like finally get to do something. I remember feeling in that third trimester of just being so huge and so out of breath and not able to like have the physical capacities that I was used to having, of just walking to the mailbox and not getting winded. And so to be able to actually have like labor start and to do something was really exciting for me.
Yeah,
Is there anything
totally.
you
It would
wanna
be.
add to that?
I mean, I think as far as like the prep up before that in the last couple weeks, I know you were already doing the exercises and stretches and stuff, but like definitely got a lot more regular and serious about it, especially in the few weeks leading up to beforehand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think just setting the environment and again like talking through some of those things beforehand, of like how do you want, making sure your house is clean, and wherever you're, like if you are doing a home birth, that you cleaned your bedroom and
It's
everything
relaxed, it's
smells nice,
ready.
and right, yeah, we had the essential oils going and all that good stuff. So
Yeah, that's awesome. So from the beginning, you kind of mentioned that so you noticed the difference between Braxton Hicks and when you started having real contractions. And you said it felt like a cramping down low. How did those change over time? And did they start 5 minutes apart or did they get closer? Tell me a little bit about your contractions as you worked through labor.
Yeah, so the contractions definitely, I've heard them referred to almost as like visualizing a wave. And it definitely felt like that, of feeling it kind of start really lightly and then get more intense and then kind of lighten back out again. And for most of the evening, they were consistently getting shorter and shorter spaced apart. I think they started around 6 p.m. And by the time it got to be around 11:30, 12:30, it started to reach that point. I felt so bad for Matt. Every maybe 20 minutes, he was like, should we call the doula? Should we call our midwife? Are you ready? Should we call them? Should we let them know? And I just remember wanting it to be us and just really enjoying it being us together and just enjoying the moment. Like, I think you look so forward to in relationships, like the first dates, the wedding, vacations. And it never occurred to me that labor was an experience that Matt and I would get to have together. And so I was really just excited to be able to do that. And even though he wasn't the one having the baby, like he was such a supportive and active role in that evening with it being a home birth, like that responsibility felt shared in that sense. And so I was just really enjoying it just being the two of us. But when it got to the point where the contractions started to get more intense, they never really got painful, which I think was a lot of the mindset work in your podcast and your web course of just kind of flipping that script a little bit. Once they started to feel intense, where it took a lot of my attention during the contraction, I think they were about 4 minutes apart by the time
Sounds right.
we called my mom and doula first. I remember feeling like I wanted it to just be Matt and I, and then I had a contraction. I remember feeling, okay, this one feels a little serious, and I feel more comfortable if other people are here. Like, I'm ready for people to start making their way over. Like, I want my doula now. About 30 minutes after that, maybe 20, I called our midwife and I was like, okay, this is starting to actually feel like real labor. Like, they just tickled before. They were just like, oh, the baby's coming, yay. And now all of a sudden I was like, well, these are contractions. Like, they're lasting longer, they're more intense. So we called both of them. They started making their way over. They had told us ahead of time, like, we live 30 minutes away, but plan for us to take an hour in case baggage, time of day, whatever. So I had assumed they would get there around 1:30. They both got there around 1:45. And at that point, like, I was still talking through contractions. I was still aware of my surroundings. I definitely wasn't in like labor land yet, but they were taking more of my attention, and it was a little bit harder for me to focus on other things as they were happening. I was really zoned in on my breathing and just kind of relaxing through them. And I remember that they both got here and they told me that they met in the front door and they were like, she seems super relaxed. She seems chill. First time mom. It'll probably be 3 or 4 hours. No big deal. They're just settling in. They came in, checked on me. And I remember our midwife went to use the fetal monitoring and find a heartbeat. And she was having a hard time finding one because our baby had switched. So she was, I believe it was posterior, where I was having a lot of back contractions. And so they were like, oh, we should flip her around maybe. So they had me hop on the bed on all fours, and my doula got her rebozo, and they started shaking my booty, shaking the apples during contractions. And it was probably 2 or 3 contractions. And I felt like a massive like scoop. And she just like completely twisted around. And it felt so much better on my back, which I didn't even realize my back was like bearing the weight of those contractions. And I remember saying like, oh, she just moved. Wow, that's crazy. It worked so fast. And then the next contraction, I was like, I feel pushy. I feel like I'm ready to start pushing. Should I push? Am I allowed to yet? Like, it feels kind of early, guys. And at that point, I remember hearing Colleen like leave the room and just start zipping and unzipping bags. And I remember the birth pool was like way too hot because we thought it was going to be longer. And I remember in between contractions, like hearing somebody throwing ice cubes in the pool and putting cold water in it and like just kind of a flurry. It was so weird. I wasn't anticipating how like focused and in the zone I was. I had like such a clear mind. I had thought that I would need more of the mantras and more of the things in my brain, but it literally was almost like 3 parts of labor. Like, it felt like my mental self, my physical self and then my baby were all kind of working together. And up until this point, it was very much my mental self and my baby, like breathing through contractions and staying relaxed and being very aware of my surroundings and the people. And then at that point, when I started to feel really pushy, like it just got so much more intense. And I remember my doula had me stand up and kind of lean on Matt's shoulders. And I remember thinking like, this sucks. Like, can I stay there? Like that was so much more comfortable. Standing up is the worst. It's so heavy. Like there's such a pressure now. The contractions are more intense.
I think that's a good point to like interject is the things that you thought maybe were most comfortable for you in the moment weren't necessarily the things that you needed to. So like having the doula and the midwife there to offer that, like obviously they're going to be there, or whoever your providers are going to be there. But like, that was interesting to me of, I think you were maybe kneeling on the floor for a long time. And then when they realized what was going on, they had the, interjections of you probably should switch to this position, and it helped a lot. So like, even though you were comfortable where you were, you needed that guidance of a better position, I guess.
Absolutely. And I love that you brought that up, because mentally and physically I felt like, oh, I'm doing really good. Like labor's feeling fine. This is going great. I can do this all day. And it wasn't until they were like, we need to switch things up. We need to move you. We didn't have a doula there. I don't know that I would have thought to do those things or felt the need, because it felt comfortable. It felt like I was progressing. And because she was there, I know that it made things go so much faster and much more comfortable in the long run.
Well, and isn't that a life lesson, Yeah. Like when you're like comfortable, that you need somebody to kind of put you, like the change, the benefits like come from being a little bit uncomfortable sometimes or switching things up. That's awesome.
Absolutely. So I was draped on his shoulders, doing contractions that way. I have no sense of time. How long would you say that was? Maybe 10, 15 minutes there?
Probably 20 or 30 maybe.
And then I remember Colleen saying, okay, honey, you can go hop in the pool now. And I remember just being so like, what? Already? Like, wait, is this transition? Like, it seems way too, you just got here. Like, I can hop in the pool already. And she was like, yes, get in the pool. It's time to hop in the pool. And it felt so, so good. Like listening to the podcast and other home birth stories, everybody said water is nature's epidural. And I'll be honest, the whole time I was like, fat chance. We'll see about that. It's just a tub of water. Like, I don't know. And I remember hopping in it and being like, they were right. This feels amazing. And it felt so good. And then at that point, pushing actually started. I think in total, I was probably in the tub 30 or 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And that was the crazy part, Stephanie, because at that point, it felt like my mental state kind of stepped out of the way, and it was my physical body and my baby working together. And I remember being so surprised by that, because I could feel like the contraction starting, and then it was my entire body like pushing my baby out to the point that like I couldn't stop it. I couldn't do anything if I wanted to. And it was literally just like my whole torso coursing and pushing her out. And it was demanding all of my focus just to stay on top of breathing. And that was a huge part of having Matt with me, because I remember his face was right next to mine. And when I couldn't like think through or like think to breathe, he was there breathing with me. And so all I had to do was like copycat his breath. So I think that was something that was huge, which we didn't like. We did the birth course and we kind of were prepared for that, but we didn't practice that as much as we should have for that. I think we would change that going forward. But at that point, it was intense, and it still wasn't, I would say, painful as much as it was just such an intense pressure. At one point, Colleen said, there's your baby's head is there. Reach down, you can feel your baby's head. And that was like so insane. At that point, my water broke in the pool, which was crazy. She was like, your water just broke. And I was like, I can't tell any difference. Okay, great. That's awesome. And at that point, I started bleeding really bad, to the point where the tub started filling up with a lot of blood. And at this point, I was just doing my contractions, following along. And Colleen asked me to get out of the tub. She didn't feel comfortable with that anymore. It was too much blood. And I hopped on the bed, which we had prepared in case of needing that. And I was definitely hemorrhaging. And I remember hearing Colleen say, okay, we need to get the baby out. You need to really push on this next one. Otherwise, we're going to need to call for a transfer, which with a home birth, I feel like that's always the big bad, like, oh, well, what if you need a hospital? And we had prepared for it. We had talked through who was going to drive, where we're going to go, what's going to happen. And so I remember just feeling this overwhelming sense of calm, of just like, it was a fact that Colleen said, just a statement. And so that's what's going to happen next if we can't. And I just pushed as hard as I could. And it felt like a contraction or two later, our baby girl was born. And it was absolutely incredible. And my mom was my doula. So she got to catch her 7th grandchild. And it was just so incredible to have like the first person my baby girl met be her grandma, and the second person to be her mom and her dad. Like, that is just something that we never would have had in a hospital. And it's just such an extra like gift that we got to have.
That's really special.
Whew.
Yeah.
I'll do my usual MO and bring us back to some practical real quick, because when we were talking about contractions, something I think was really helpful was we had like an app for measuring the time and the like how long they were lasting in the time between contractions. And I don't know that was super helpful once we got closer to the delivery for her to be like, because I feel like
So
she kind of got
focused.
sucked into that.
Yeah.
But I think it was really helpful for me, because I obviously was much more detached from the process than she was. So I had the capacity to be like keeping an eye on that and helping to tell when we needed to call doula and midwife and all that. So like, that's one thing I would throw out, is if you can get one of those apps and use it, I think it's helpful. It was helpful for me, and just be mindful of like not letting her get sucked into it and paying too much attention to it.
I would say it was very helpful for me at the early stages of labor, because I know, okay, 7 minutes, oh, it's about to come, and not in an anticipation, like tense up, but just in a, okay, I want to get settled. I want to relax. Okay. And oh, there it is. Okay. And we're breathing through it. But you're right. Once we got to the point where it was like every 3 minutes, I knew it was coming. Labor wasn't stalling at that point. And I think it was our midwife, Colleen, was finally like, you don't need that anymore. It's happening. Yeah. And we were like, oh yeah, okay. You're right. It is. I got definitely focused on that. And then once it was removed, I feel like I actually could focus on my body and just feeling those contractions as they came. And it was awesome.
Yeah, you mentioned something as you went throughout this that I think was really powerful too. You talked about how the different, like your mental state, your physical state, your emotional state, kind of like where you were at throughout this. And you're like, I don't know that I was like pulling from those mantras or, grabbing this kind of stuff like for these positions, but you were working through it. And as you were saying that, I'm like, yes. And all of the prep work, when done right, when done well, just like you did, you don't have to be thinking of those things. They are a part of you at that point. And your body is reacting to everything that you have prepped in order to be able to do that. It sounds like the both of you kind of just leaned into your roles really well and together. And so I don't know, that whole story and all throughout is just so special. It's like exactly how you want to hear things progress. Like when left alone, birth is very natural and normal and comfortable and intense, and you need support. But you guys can do that together in a really great way when you're prepared to be able to do that. So that was really great. I'm curious about the hemorrhaging, since that happened prior to pushing baby out. Like, what did that look like for your immediate postpartum? So baby got to meet grandma, baby got to meet you guys. What was happening with the hemorrhaging?
So after baby came out, I remember that Colleen was still like, okay, we're not done yet. You still have to push that placenta out. And I remember that while we were still kind of like, wow, baby, at one point she was like, Olivia, I need you to push the placenta out on the next one. Otherwise, we're still going to need to transfer you. Like, you're still bleeding. We still got to take care of this. And I remember at that point, I had a shot of Pitocin in my thigh that she gave me. And we really pushed, and the placenta came right out. And as soon as it came out, she instantly relaxed. The bleeding kind of subsided. It felt like she had it back under control again. Not that she ever lost control, but you could tell that she definitely felt much more comfortable. Later, a few hours later, once things had settled down and, we got to delay cord clamping and all of that, she was looking at the placenta because we were curious, like, what happened? Should I still go in? What's going on here? And she said that the placenta looked really beautiful, except for one or two spots where it looked like it had calcified, and that she thinks that maybe that had been something with the bleeding. So she didn't really have 100% this is what it is answer, but we felt pretty confident that that was most likely what it was and that it wouldn't impact future pregnancies or anything like that. But it was kind of funny because at this point it's Christmas Day, right? And I had been laying in bed. I lost a lot of blood. She had told us, like, be careful getting up, take your time going to the bathroom, things like that. But me just being like the personality that I am, I just got up and went to the bathroom, and I was having terrible diarrhea again, way too much TMI, but I know that it's one of the things I appreciated most about your podcast. And so Matt was there helping me go to the bathroom, and all of a sudden I was like, I don't feel very good. I feel really hot. And I passed out. And then I came back and he was still there, and he was like, are you good? Are you okay? And at that point I was like, I don't know. I feel really lightheaded. And I passed out again. And then I came back a third time. And at this point, my mom is holding baby. She's calling 911, and I can kind of hear that happening. And Matt was like, are you okay? Are you okay? And at that point, I felt like I couldn't hear them, and they were kind of like going away from me. And I passed out a third time. And so then I woke up, and I'm laying flat on my back on the bathroom floor, and Matt's face is right next to mine. And he just said, you are okay. And it was just like, I am okay. I'm okay. What, I am okay. And he was like, you are okay. Drink this orange juice. Like, EMS is on their way. We are getting things going. And they ended up calling 911. They came to our house. They walked me from the bathroom back to my bed. They took my vitals. Everything was completely fine. I was butt naked. Like, it was just so hilarious and so unexpected. And we joked later that it was like the three wise men coming to our house on Christmas Day. And like, we just made a ton of jokes about it. But I wanted to share it because I know that sometimes with home births, there's so much fear around, well, what if something bad happens? And like, bad stuff did happen, but it was okay because our midwife was experienced. She knew what to do. She was calm. Our doula was calm. They were supportive. Matt was calm. And even if bad things happen at a home birth, it does not mean that you cannot have a home birth. It just means that you have to prepare for it and you have to talk through those situations. And there was still so much peace and love and like calm and comfort here in our home birth. And I just feel like if I had had like the perfect dream 9-hour labor, babies here, home birth, I would feel really anxious going into another one of like, well, what if something bad happens? Because it was too good. And I was really happy in hindsight that something bad did happen, and just like the peace is still there. Like, it is still a beautiful, wonderful experience. So if you are feeling really insecure about a home birth or what if something bad happens, like it might happen, but your midwife is prepared. There are hospitals nearby. Take those things into account, but don't let that rob you of an incredible experience and home birth because of a what if fear.
Yeah. Speaking with your midwife or even the people who came and you were fine once you got moving, did they, because of the whole orange juice thing, I'm just wondering, do they think it was a blood sugar thing? Did you think you just lost too much blood too quick? Was there any kind of like theory behind that?
I think blood pressure, as opposed to blood sugar.
Totally.
Yeah. So yeah, she had to basically she needed to get down and not be sitting up and elevated feet. Yeah, it was just she moved too fast, too quickly after losing that amount of blood. So, and it was back to not normal, but like normal pretty quick, right? I think one of the paramedics commented, your vitals are better than mine, 5 minutes after they got here. So it was just she went too fast, too quickly.
Yeah. Which is common. That happens in hospitals as well. And we know, right? That's why you go to the bathroom with somebody. So yeah. I'm glad you shared that. Yeah. Matt, was that pretty scary for you? Were you like, what just happened? And did you have like concerns? Because, was it like oh shoot, we did this at home. What were we thinking? Like everything that goes through your head at that moment. What was that like for you?
I mean, definitely was, stressful situation. I think, honestly, I was more the like emotional impact for me, I think, was more during the actual birth of when she was hemorrhaging then. And just like, I think I was a little bit more, not that what she described wasn't accurate, but like I was more aware of all of the signals that I was picking up from the midwife, and like maybe the level of concern that was there, that, she, because she had other things going on, wasn't picking up on those things. So like, I think that probably was the most stressful part for me, was actually during the birth, and just like not knowing if we were going to have to go to the hospital and if they were going to be able to get the bleeding under control. I think her passing out, again, it was stressful, but like,
Felt more normal.
Not normal, but just like, it wasn't overwhelming. It was very helpful to have her mother stayed, as part of the doula side of it too. She stayed for, I think pretty much the whole day afterwards,
That was
just
more
so
the
we
mother
got
side.
sleep and
Yeah.
stuff. No, but I'm just saying, like, having another person there to, watch the baby and
Yeah.
to be on the phone to call 911. So I was able to give full attention to Olivia and to get her down onto the floor so she wasn't, falling off of the toilet and all that good stuff. So yeah, like having somebody else there to be the second person and make the calls was helpful. Also, like, I have a fairly stressful job, so you can't control that, but like if you're already inoculated to stress, it helps with that. So
When I think you brought up a good point, that is something that maybe we don't talk to dads about enough, but as a doula or as a dad, you are, I would say, even hyper aware of all of the other things going on while also standing as the rock supporting mom. And so that can be difficult in a different way. There's been many times where, and it is great. I've had the conversations with moms postpartum where I've been a doula at their birth, and I come back postpartum afterwards and we do our check-in, and I'm like, tell me about your birth, because I want to hear the birth story from their point of view again, and what kind of trauma did they have, or was there anything that we need to talk about, anything like that. And they'll have just these incredible experiences. And I'm in the background, like, I saw this, I saw that, I saw, like, it's like making me uncomfortable. You know what I mean? And so it's like, well, great. That's awesome. Like if they had a great birth, if she felt safe and protected and all of that during that, then everyone else in the room did their job. Right? Like, unless there was an absolute, like where you said Colleen grabbed your attention, like, hey, look at me, I actually do need this now, and having to be a little bit more stern with like her concerns and your safety. But anyways, I definitely think that's something to note and something for dads to be aware of, because that's something you weren't prepped for, right? Like you kind of take all of that on while calmly supporting your wife. And that's a lot. That's a lot that we ask of you guys to be able to do. And I think men are well built to do it. I will say that. I think that is just one of the benefits of having a loving, supportive man with us during those times, because they are so good at being that rock and that strength, and kind of calmly taking all of that stress on. Whereas sometimes us women don't do that as well. So it's good. It's really good.
Agree with that.
Yeah. Okay. I don't want to keep you guys too long, but I do love to end these with, I want to hear your best advice for moms and best advice for dads from each of you. So Liv, give me your best advice for moms and best advice for dads.
I would say my best advice for moms, I think if you're considering a home birth, surround yourself with supportive people in your life, like regardless of if it's a home birth actually, or a hospital or birthing center, like whatever your preferences are for your birth, surround yourself with people that will support that. Because I specifically did not tell outer circle people that I was having a home birth until I was really comfortable and really confident about that decision in the 3rd trimester. And I can't tell you how many times people ask, well, what if something goes wrong? Well, is there a hospital nearby? And I remember thinking, like, do you really think I'd be doing this if there wasn't? Like, of course I've thought of that. Of course there is. And, just even like, there was some lady at the checkout store and was like, well, you're not going to get an epidural? And I just wanted to be like, I don't even know you. Like, why are you
I know.
that's not supportive. So I think surrounding yourself with people that will support you in your decisions, whatever they are, and can really encourage you when you have those doubts about like, well, maybe I do, maybe I don't, maybe I want this, maybe I want that. And just that was huge for me of having people in my life that could step in and support me and encourage me when I started to have those doubts, and just accepted my decisions for what they were and let me have the labor and the birth that I wanted to. I think the other thing I want to say is that your body is physiologically designed to have babies. And despite whatever insecurities or doubts that you have mentally, physically, that's what I kept going back to. And telling some of my friends now post baby and post home birth, unmedicated, all of that, it wasn't for the bragging rights of that. It wasn't for the accomplishment of that. It was because that's how I wanted to have my baby. That's how I felt comfortable and safe. And it's not because I have a high pain tolerance. It's not because I'm special. It's not because of all of these things. It's just because that's what I wanted. And I prepared for it mentally. And I think that any woman can have that, whether it's in a home birth, whether it's in a hospital. You are capable of so much more than you think you are. And your body is designed by God to be able to birth babies and to have pain management and to be able to relax and to be able to do all these incredible things if you just kind of step out of the way and let your body do what it's supposed to do. I think my best advice for dads or for partners, honestly, the biggest thing that you did for me was just listen. Like, there were so many times he just listened and encouraged. And if I was having a sucky day, if I was really tired, if I needed a third nap for that day, like, go take it. Like, do what you need to do to take care of yourself and to take care of our baby. Eat healthy, go for a walk, do the things that make you feel comfortable and that are best for our child. And it's really easy during your labor and pregnancy to get so caught up with your own comfort and the things that you are feeling right now. And he just was so encouraging and supportive of planning ahead and thinking through, the ways that I could be preparing for the baby and preparing my body and just taking care of myself first.
I love that. And how about from your perspective, Matt? And I know it's a tricky place to tell pregnant women what you think they should be doing, but from your experience with your wife, what are some things that you noticed that might be helpful?
I think, again, maybe it's kind of specific to us and like our personalities, but we touched on how she maybe was in a little bit of denial early on, and like how both of us procrastinated on some of the preparation pieces. So I think that probably would be the only thing I'm qualified to give advice on, is maybe just start the preparation piece a little sooner, and don't wait too long before you start doing the exercises and stretches and all of that. For dads, I think, again, I'm going to go super practical, but like, after, do as much as you can to be as available and present as you can be after the birth, because I was not, I think we handled it fine, but I wasn't necessarily aware of or prepared for just how completely dependent she was going to be after the fact. And I'm very blessed to have, with my employer, have a great parental leave program. So that was a blessing. But like, I walked away from it definitely saying, like, I don't know how other couples do this without having some of those benefits. So like,
family and friends to support so much. Like, we had so many people offering to bring meals and to do stuff, and I remember being like, we got it, it's fine. And then postpartum hit, and my entire sense of self was just taking care of the baby, and all of Matt's time and responsibility was just taking care of me. And I was so thankful that my mom and sisters and his mom and sisters like just knew better than we did and already had things ready to be helpful for us.
I would say, like, not everybody has the same, situations where they might have as much time off work, but like, do as much preparation as you can ahead of time to get as much time as you can have, because you are going to have to do a lot of work and be a lot of support. And like, having like frozen meals from friends and family was a big thing, because I didn't have to worry about cooking. I could pop something in the microwave or oven and warm it up, and little things like that were prepared ahead of time
And I
made a
just
super big difference.
remember Matt saying, well, I have so much time off. What am I going to be doing? I need projects. I need to have things to do. And I remember us both just kind of being like, well, just going to take it as it comes. And him being so almost nervous about like, what am I going to be doing? I need to know what I'm going to do. And I'd say, you're going to take care of me. But neither one of us really quite knew what that meant.
Mhm.
So for any dads out there that are feeling the same way of like, well, I'll go on a camping trip. I'll go fishing. So I know you
No,
kept
don't
throwing
worry,
that
you're
out
gonna
there.
have plenty of things to do.
You're just going to be taking care of her and taking care of baby because that sleep deprivation hits and I'm hungry all the time. And I just would not have been able to have the postpartum rest and recovery if it wasn't for him being there all hands on deck to take care of me and to take care of baby.
That's awesome. Yeah. But yeah, birth and bringing new babies into the world is a lot. And there's no describing it or fully learning about it until you experience it. So that's a good reminder for everybody. Well, thank you guys. Thank you for being here. Thank you both for being here and sharing your versions of the birth story and how you supported one another and brought this new baby into the world. Big congratulations, obviously. And thank you so
Thanks.
much for being here.
Thanks for having us, Stephanie. I'm so happy we got to do this.